everyone. This is Doug Green, and I'm the publisher of Technology Reseller News. And today I'm very pleased to have with us again Ravel Todd, who's the Chief Marketing Officer of CallCabinet. Ravel, thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here.
So we're going to be talking about a number of different things, but I think our big picture today with CallCabinet is going to be sort of breaking beyond the silos that we've sometimes put around the contact center, departmental, vertical, and use cases, really kind of breaking out and taking the information that a company can capture and maybe using it with new people and new places and new ways that have never even been thought of before. So, Ravel, before we dive into that, just tell us a little bit about CallCabinet, what you guys are doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have been in the call recording analytics space for the better part of 11 years. And what has been transforming over the last 3 has been that introduction of AI into more and more technologies. And so that's the piece that has evolved most recently that allows us to go in and take data that's being collected and produce some really incredible insights that traditionally have been used within a calling or contact center environment. But now, as we look at this, as we have a way to engage with this data, we realize how many departments would benefit within organizations from the information that gets collected that typically doesn't go much further than within the agent world, right? And now we can take it and explore it further.
So before we get into that, let's talk about what we're actually talking about, because that's something we've talked about in previous podcasts that, it's one thing to kind of like generate the data, but it's another thing to know what the heck it is. So my understanding is you guys really help people not only generate the data, but have a coherent idea of what they're looking at.
Yeah, so a couple of things. We are agnostic when it comes to platforms, calling or UC platforms that we can connect to. And by connecting to it, we will ingest that conversation data. And we take that conversation data and we can then start to create the reporting around it and the analysis around it into these business intelligence reports. And so this conversation data can be in the form of voice, video, chat, text, email, social, right? All the places that people engage in conversation across a business.
So it's not just that you and I had a conversation today. There's deep insights into what went on in this conversation.
That's right. So from a compliance perspective, when you're in the calling or contact center, it's of course critical that you've got a really robust call recording and analytics solution, right? To go back and make sure that you're meeting your compliance mandates, that everything that is being captured is captured correctly and stored correctly and securely. So that was one piece. But within that, I can decide if there are keywords or key phrases that are really important to different parts of the business that are being flagged so that those conversations can be routed to the people who care about them. And all of a sudden that starts this really interesting dialogue of, well, who else cares?
Right.
Right? Which is what this conversation is about today.
Yeah, so this is sort of interesting. So, the first thing the CallCabinet does is you guys take care of the basics. Let's get into compliance. Let's be inside the law. Let's at least make sure that if we have a contact center, that it's functioning, that we're recording the calls as per the law.
That's
and so
table
on.
stakes, right? If
table
you're in this
stakes,
technology,
right?
that's the table stakes.
We gotta do the first step before, but now you guys are, way beyond step 1 into maybe step 16 or something, right? That
That's
you're
right.
saying, hey, wait a second. We have usable and useful information that could be used by other departments. So, Ravel, could you give me sort of a use case of what that might look like beyond the contact center?
Yeah, absolutely. So what happens now is that we've got this, let's just say that the calls being recorded are coming from the support or the contact center world. And these calls, after they've been recorded, now we want to say, all right, let's talk about the sales organization. Sales needs to know, what are customers calling in asking about? What's working well, what isn't working well? And so what this allows them to do is to go in and they can now, using generative AI that's integrated into our platform, ask questions of the calls that have been recorded. What
Hmm.
is the most common feature being asked about on these calls? And here comes your answers. And now I, as a salesperson, know that this is a really relevant feature as I engage with new customers, new potential customers, to bring up, to talk about. It allows me to now understand where the majority of our business seems to be coming from, what features and functions are driving that. It also says to me, wow, this is the fourth time that this functionality has been asked for and we don't have it.
Hmm.
So now I can go back and sales can talk to product to say, this is a feature or function we need to have. So you can see where all of a sudden what was kind of sitting in the support level as they were talking about problems or they were asking about features that they needed. Now, all of a sudden, we've taken this to sales, which might, by the way, may feed into marketing because now marketing wants to know how do my campaigns need to be structured when I'm going out there to create them? Who's the audience I need to be targeting? Who's asking these questions? And how do I also feed information back into the product groups as we build out our roadmaps to help sales and to help marketing and create that vision? So all of this information sits today in the data that's being collected from
Right.
a group that traditionally probably didn't think their conversations mattered beyond their, specific piece of the organization.
There's a lot here, but let's start with what the obvious one is. You're giving people visibility into something that, especially now that we have a distributed workforce, and
Yes,
we're not having maybe the social lunchtime contact or even after hours contact that we sort of used to have as portrayed on TV shows like The Office and so on.
right.
That environment maybe is disappearing. You guys are creating something that gives people now the visibility they might have had informally into what's happening around the office.
Absolutely. This gets into the whole employee retention, employee
Hmm.
training piece as well, right? So you and I may talk on a regular basis, and maybe we go sideways with each other. And all of a sudden, you
Right.
wonder why Ravel has been very disengaged. And all of a sudden, you've heard she's looking for a job. You don't know where that went wrong, but you know she's a top performer. You don't want to lose her. So, how do you key into those internal conversations as an HR department to find out what conversations have been predominantly negative? What groups are they happening in? And let's go find out why and get ahead of attrition that's not wanted, that is unintended. And then what kinds of training can take place that we bake into the internal requirements? What types of skill sets do we need to be looking for based on this knowledge so that when we do our recruiting, we know what kinds of skills we need to be looking for? How do we up our game in our recruitment, right? So all of this is so important. And then that's the recording outside of the contact center world. This is recording in the departments that talk to each other or talk outside that also give us some great insight into a very healthy, strategic, profitable organization once you've tapped in to what people are what they're saying and how you're getting that back.
So this is interesting because I normally don't think of call recording and the types of things you guys do as associated with EX, with employee experience.
Mm, big piece.
Maybe I
It's a
should,
big
but I don't.
piece.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, your point was well made. We are a remote hybrid work world.
right.
And so that interpersonal activity is largely you and me right now doing this, and which is fine. But if I'm grumpy and hang up, if I'm working with in an office space, lots of people know I'm grumpy and I've hung up. But now it's just me sitting at home. My bulldogs know I'm grumpy and I've just hung up, and that's it. Right. And so you have to find a way to gauge what's happening within meetings and one-to-one conversations to really get a better sense of the health. of your group, of your company, and where you can do things better, where processes are lagging. And it took that person this many steps to get what they were needing. And let's go back and look at the application they were using that can reduce the steps. Let's find out how long it took to do that and where we can make that easier. And this is good for, from a government perspective. We were talking about that previously, right? Lots of legacy processes and procedures and paperwork that has to happen that just never mature. It's just they're really archaic in a lot of ways. And so this allows, without the need for additional resource, the ability to go in and say, my gosh, it took 20 minutes for that conversation to happen. If we do these things differently, it could take 10. And now you've cut in half the time it took for your human to engage with another human and talk to more humans now.
We have Enterprise Connect coming up. It's sort of now amazingly just around the corner.
I know.
A lot of companies there, a lot of folks walking around have a contact center, but there's many
Mm-hmm.
more who actually don't or don't feel they do. They represent a large enterprise that historically basically doesn't operate that way. But it seems like you're offering something here that might be of great use to companies that don't feel that they, have that type of operation.
Yeah, yeah, I think call recording brings with it for a lot of people that's you're getting recorded when you call your insurance
Right,
company, you're getting recorded when you're calling your doctor's office, right? Anytime you've got a HIPAA or any type of compliance related engagement, it's to a big group of people that you're going
right.
to dead end into. But in reality, we are all points of contact internally and externally. And so these conversations, when I think this is kind of I know this is the conversation that we've been having with partners as well as and customers, which is cast a broader net about where
Right.
the strategy for your business is going and how you can go and sharpen that strategy more quickly with the information you could be gathering every single moment of the day. And how do you need to realize that in a form that's digestible for you so that you can go off and quickly go do something with it? And that has been the output of what CallCabinet brings to the table with this generative AI integration with all the analytics that we can produce that are customizable based upon who it is that needs it, so that we can decide what are those dashboards needing to look like. What does marketing need to see? What does sales need to see? What is the revenue opportunity that's been lost on the sales calls that have occurred, so that we can go back and train those sales people to manage that gap and go and get that revenue that's been lost or not at least attempted to be gotten, and open up very quick responses to where you're seeing ebbs and flows in the business. And this is, again, not just customer experience. This is in sales. This is also what you're doing internally to keep a good corporate culture that is very different now than it used to be.
So if you're a technologist, if you're an enterprise end user and you work as a technologist in an enterprise, it sounds like one of your messages to that community is, you might be able to now with this tool be able to walk in the door and say to everyone else in the organization, we have a powerful tool to bring us together better.
Yes, to strategize better, right? Not just engage with each
Right.
other, but engage with planning and where we're going to take the business based upon real life information that we're getting every single day. And we don't have to do specifically a focus group to go get this information. We have focus groups going on every single day with the engagements that are happening all over the business. And let's go get that information and let's go quickly do something with it. So that is, I think, the real message here is let's talk differently. I'm talking to partners. Let's have the partners talk differently to customers. Let's have customers be thinking differently, more broadly, with how they're capturing those conversations and what they can go do with it to impact their business quickly.
So Ravel, I really want to thank you for joining us today. This has been very interesting. It's interesting to see CallCabinet sort of reaching out beyond the silo of simply getting contact centers into compliance. That's itself still a big issue, but looking at basically using and collecting information for a lot of different uses. Will we see a lot of this at Enterprise Connect if we come by your booth? Will we be able to learn more about it?
Absolutely. So we'll be in the AI innovation zone, which is new to Enterprise Connect this year. So please come by and see us. We've got lots we can share, the latest AI technologies that have been integrated and how we're using them and these use cases that we've been talking about today and how it benefits the partner and their engagement with customers and the customers as they engage with their partners.
Ravel, I'm looking forward to seeing you at Enterprise Connect. I'm also looking forward to our next podcast. But for now, thank you very much indeed for joining us today.
Thanks, Doug.